WNIS 731. Now, District 85 represents parts of Virginia Beach, including the neighborhoods of Larkspur, Aragona, Mount Trashmore, Fairfield, and Arrowhead, and the seat is currently held by our next guest, Karen Greenhalgh. Now, of course, you remember her name because, let me see, it was very exciting. The results certified on November 15 showed Republicans slipping 7 seats and regaining majority in the House of Delegates. All races have been called by the Associated Press. A recount in the 85th District, which concluded on December 3rd, showed the incumbent Democrat Alex Askew gaining 12 votes, with Republican Karen Greenhalgh still winning by 115 votes. Now, I got to see if I can make Karen laugh a little bit before we actually get her on the air. When Bob McDonnell, who's been on this, he's on with us once a month, and Bob's an old friend. I think the world of him. And when he won as Attorney General, and he won by like just a few votes, so we called him Landslide Bob. Should we call you Landslide Karen?
Yes, sir. I take it I'm on the air. How are you, Tony?
I'm very happy to have you on. I'm very happy to finally get to meet you and talk to you. And I was glad we got the email. What happened was, now the Delegate Greenhalgh wrote in, and she said on August 1st, the show focused on the topic of school shootings, specifically the consideration of allowing teachers and other school staff to carry guns on school property. We had a story that I got where some of the teachers just felt that they were not safe and they wanted to be carrying. And then the delegate said, I appreciated you giving priority to callers with police or military experience, and your callers provided valuable perspectives. Thanks to legislation I introduced, and that's what we want to find out about. If you would, Delegate, tell us all about it.
I certainly will. And I have to say, though, you've been making me laugh for a long time.
Well, a lot of women have laughed at me.
Okay, no, I am a long-time listener. So thank you so much for having me on the air.
My pleasure.
And yes, as far as the schools, you're right. I did pass legislation. Under the law before this year, we had good laws in place. Most people aren't aware, but every school board had to see to it that every school had an employee who underwent a school safety training program that's done by our Department of Criminal Justice. And they have to have annual safety audits. And they have to have a threat assessment team. That's been in place for a while. So we have quite a few schools that don't have SROs. They don't have police on the premises. And I was just looking for a way to make the schools safer. And what we came up with in my bill is that the schools who do not have an SRO, the law enforcement officers will have to appoint a law enforcement officer to be a liaison with that school. That officer will have to take the same training so that they understand the safety programs in that particular school. So they have a liaison with the local law enforcement, someone they can call and help them with their threat assessment. Okay. And the schools that do have an SRO on staff, that SRO will be required to be a member of the threat assessment team. So through this legislation, while we already had good laws in place, now we know every single school in Virginia will have connections with their local law enforcement. Good. And so the whole concept of arming teachers and the concerns that your callers had, the primary concern was when the police go in, they don't know who is supposed to be armed and who isn't. The teachers could be in danger, but they could actually plan for that in advance if that was something that that school system wanted to do. So they do have plans. And another thing that this administration did, we put in funding for digital mapping. So every school, K through 12, will have digital mapping, which means that the police, first responders, if there's a fire, they will have a digital map of the school and the windows, the access, anything that they need to know will be readily available to help first responders no matter what the emergency is at all of our schools. So I'm just really proud about what we're doing in Virginia and how we're working so hard to keep our students safe. As well you should be. That's outstanding. I don't see how many could be against that. Now, Delegate, and we're talking to Delegate Karen Greenhalgh. She spells her name Greenhalgh. Years ago, when I first started doing this, there was a great congressman by the name of Owen Pickett. He was a Democrat, but that was back in the days when they were a lot more conservative than they are now. And he taught me about
all it took and all the hoops one had to jump through to have a good idea and then have it become a good law. So what I would like you to do is walk the listeners through it. You have an idea, and you think, man, this is a good idea. We need to do this. And here you are. You're a delegate. You're in the General Assembly. What is the process by the time you have that good idea? How does that good idea become a good law, Delegate?
That's an excellent question. I love the system that we have in place. We do things right in Virginia. And so this bill is actually a good one to explain. This started as one of the governor's day one bills to have an SRO in every school, which is, it's a good idea. Safety was his goal. But I agreed to carry the bill. But once I started talking to the other delegates and senators, we realized it wasn't a good fit for every school system. Some schools share buildings. They didn't need an SRO for both schools. Okay. Some are rural and they're close enough where they could share an SRO. So we started making changes as soon as we began having discussions. And then a lot of schools just simply didn't want necessarily to be told that they had to have an armed person in their schools. It should have been their choice. And personally, I agree with that. I'm a firm believer in people making their own choices and their elected officials making decisions on their behalf and then being held accountable. So the process this went through, we went through 2 committees in the House, 2 committees in the Senate, and ended up with a bill that was extremely, there were a lot of differences from the original bill, but I think that process of questioning and having so many people look at the bills and so many people give input, we end up with better legislation, and it increases the chances of us thinking of problems and finding unintended consequences because we have so many people discussing. I think it's a great process, and I really like the bill we came up with better than the one that we started with.
Outstanding. Now, Delegate, if people want to find out more about you, you got a website, I know you do, and just go to Karen, Greenhalgh. Tell us something other good. Make us positive about the future of the Old Dominion that we all love so much. End on a positive note. Tell us something good.
End on a positive note. Well, for one thing, it doesn't matter if you know how to spell my name because most people spell it with 2 L's. Yeah. So I bought that domain too. If you put in Greenhalgh with 2 L's, you still get to me. And but I think that to me the most important thing to know about Virginia is that we are working together. It's like this bill. No one thought we could get an SRO bill through with a Republican majority in the House, Democrat majority in the Senate, and, the whole new administration. But I actually had legislation that was co-patroned by Democrats.
Outstanding.
And we are working together and talking to each other. And as long as in Plato's, remember the Republic? And there was a statement in there that said, you can reason with anyone if they're willing to listen.
Yes.
As long as we listen to each other, we can make progress. And I'm really, truly seeing that in Virginia. And I think that's an extremely positive note.
And I think if
you want to laugh,
great.
I called you 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I called your show, and the call went really well, but I haven't called since. It took getting elected to office to get me to call your office to call you again.
Well, I guess I'll talk to you again in 20 years.
I hope it's not 20 years. I'll be glad to talk to you anytime.
Well, I tell you what, and we're here for you anytime. And anytime you want to promote something or tell me about what's going on in the General Assembly, you give me a shout on an email or call, and you'll be right on the air.
I sure will. Thank you so much, Tony. You have a great day.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Now, that makes sense, doesn't it? 85th District right there. Karen Greenhalgh, she wrote in. It sounded like making sense to me, moving in the right direction, get all kind of bipartisan support for it, and doing the best to keep our children safe. Isn't that nice? Yeah, it sounds squared away. I tell you what, you look up her resume. She's squared away. Got a very